The bet was made on a Tuesday morning at the Millbrook Farm Coop. Half the county was there to hear it happen. Jake Peterson, the John Deere dealer from town, standing in the middle of the store with his arms crossed and that smirk he always wore when he thought he was smarter than everyone else. "My old Farmall can't compete with modern equipment," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "These old farmers, holding on to their grandpa's tractors, are living in the past. Technology has moved on. If anyone thinks different, I'll bet $10,000 my new 8R can outwork any antique tractor in this county." He was looking right at me when he said it. Everyone knew he was talking about me. "My name is Russell Hayes. I'm 48 years old. I farm 600 acres outside Millbrook with equipment that Jake Peterson considers museum pieces. My main tractor is a 1951 Farmall M. Bought it from my uncle in 1998 for $1,500. That tractor has plowed, planted, and harvested every acre I own for 26 years without ever leaving me stranded." Jake had been trying to sell me a new tractor for 5 years. Every spring he'd show up at my farm with brochures. Every fall he'd call about year-end sales. I always told him the same thing. My equipment works fine. When it breaks, I fix it. When it needs maintenance, I maintain it. I don't need computers and GPS and all the technology that costs a fortune and breaks down when you need it most. That answer made Jake angry. He took it personally, took it as an insult to everything he sold. So that Tuesday morning at the Coop, he decided to make it public, decided to embarrass me in front of the whole farming community. $10,000, he repeated. My 8R340 against Hayes's old Farmall. Any farming task you want, plowing, disking, planting, whatever. My tractor will do it faster, better, and more efficiently, guaranteed. The co-op went silent. Everyone was looking at me, waiting to see what I'd say, whether I'd take the bait. I should have walked away, should have ignored him, should have let Jake have his moment and moved on. But something about the way he said it, the distinctiveness, the assumption that old automatically meant inferior, the public challenge designed to humiliate me, it got under my skin. I set down the bag of seed I was buying and walked over to where Jake was standing. "You're serious about this? $10,000? Dead serious. My 8 are against your antique Farmall. We'll let the county fair committee set the terms, make it fair. Public competition. Everyone can watch." Jake was grinning now. Thought he had me. Thought I'd back down or make excuses. Thought he'd proven his point just by making the offer. I thought about my Farmall. Thought about all the work it had done. All the years it had served. All the times it had started on the first try in weather that would kill newer equipment. Thought about whether it was crazy to risk $10,000 on a 50-year-old tractor. Then I thought about Jake's smirk, about his assumption that new was automatically better, about his need to publicly prove that old farmers like me were obsolete. "You're on," I said. "County fair is in 3 weeks. Let's settle this there." The Coop erupted, everyone talking at once. Half of them thought I was insane. Half thought it was the most entertaining thing to happen in the county all year. Everyone knew they'd be at the fair to watch. Jake stuck out his hand. We shook. The bet was official. That's when I realized what I'd done. Just wagered $10,000 I didn't really have on a tractor that was older than I was against a machine that cost $250,000 and had technology I didn't fully understand. Smart? Probably not, but too late now. The news spread through the county like wildfire. By Wednesday morning, everyone within 50 miles knew about the bet. The county fair committee called me that afternoon. They wanted to make it an official event. Schedule it for Saturday of fair week. Give it prime time. Charge admission even. This was the most excitement Millbrook had seen in years. They set the terms. 3 separate competitions: plowing, planting, a pulling contest. Best 2 out of 3 wins. They'd provide identical plots of land, same soil conditions, same size, same everything. Fair competition. May the best tractor win. I spent the next 3 weeks preparing that Farmall like it was going to war. This wasn't just about winning a bet anymore. It was about pride, about proving something to Jake Peterson and everyone else who thought old farmers were living in the past. First morning, after the bet, I was in the machinery shed at 5 a.m., pulled the Farmall in, started a complete inspection, went through every single system methodically, changed the engine oil and filter, drained and replaced the transmission fluid, changed the hydraulic fluid, checked every grease, fitting, and lubricated them properly. These were things I did regularly anyway, but now I did them with surgical precision. Pulled the spark plugs and checked them. Gap was off on 2. Replaced all 4 with new ones. Checked the timing. Adjusted the magneto until it was perfect. Pulled the carburetor completely apart. Cleaned every passage, every jet, every port. Reassembled it carefully and adjusted the mixture until the engine ran as smooth as the day it was built. My neighbor, Tom Bradshaw, stopped by the second day. He's 76, been farming since before I was born. He walked around the Farmall slowly, watching me work. Finally, he said, "You know you're crazy, right? That dealer's tractor has more horsepower in one cylinder than your whole engine." "I know. But horsepower isn't everything." He nodded. Stood there a minute longer. Then he said, "My dad had a Farmall M49 model, farmed with it for 31 years. Never let him down once. These new tractors break down. You need a computer technician that breaks down. You need a wrench. There's value in that." Tom came back the next day, brought tools from his shop, helped me adjust the clutch, helped me check the rear end for proper oil level, shared stories about his dad's Farmall, about the work it had done, about the reliability of equipment built when they still made things to last. Word spread through the county about what I was doing. Other farmers started stopping by, some to offer advice, some to watch, some to tell me I was wasting my time, but most came because they were invested now. This wasn't just my bet anymore. This was about all of us who still believed old equipment had value. Jake, meanwhile, was talking to everyone. At the feed store, at the diner, at church, I'd hear the reports. Jake saying his 8R had 340 horsepower. Jake explaining the GPS guidance system, accurate to within an inch. Jake demonstrating the automatic draft control. Jake showing the touchscreen interface that controlled 50 different functions. He wasn't just preparing a tractor, he was running a marketing campaign. The contrast couldn't have been more obvious. Jake with his showroom new technology, me with my 73-year-old tractor and hand tools. David versus Goliath. Except everyone assumed Goliath would win this time. But I knew things Jake didn't know. Things you only learn from decades of running the same machine. I knew that Farmall M responded best when the throttle was at exactly 75%. Not full throttle. 75% gave optimal power with best fuel efficiency and engine longevity. I knew the clutch engaged smoothest if you let it out in one continuous motion rather than feathering it. I knew the steering had a slight pull to the left that you compensated for automatically after enough hours in the seat. I knew which gear worked best for plowing, which for planting, which for pulling, I knew the sounds the engine made when it was happy, and the sounds it made when something needed attention. I knew that tractor, like some people know their own heartbeat. That knowledge was my advantage. Third week I focused on the tires. Those big rear tires were original equipment. 73 years old. They showed age, but they still held air and had decent tread. I'd filled them with calcium chloride solution years ago for weight and traction. Now I checked the mixture, added more solution, made sure they were perfectly balanced, set the tire pressure exactly where it needed to be. 28 psi in back, 32 in front. Perfect for the kind of work we'd be doing. Jake's 8R arrived at his dealership the Wednesday before the fair. Brand new. Special order. He'd gotten John Deere Corporate to send him a demo unit specifically for this competition. That tractor had every option, every upgrade, every technology package. It was a rolling showcase of modern agricultural engineering. The local newspaper sent a reporter, took pictures of both tractors. Jake standing beside his gleaming 8R with all its technology. Me standing beside my weathered Farmall with all its history. The article ran Friday. Headline read, "Old Iron versus New Technology. The showdown everyone's talking about." The article was fair, explained both perspectives, quoted Jake talking about efficiency and precision, quoted me talking about reliability and simplicity, but the comments section online was brutal. People arguing, people taking sides, people from outside the county weighing in, some supporting me, most thinking I was delusional. One comment stuck with me. Guy from Ohio wrote, "This Hayes guy is about to learn an expensive lesson about why farming requires modern equipment. His grandpa's tractor belongs in a museum, not a competition." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was about to embarrass myself in front of 500 people and lose $10,000 I couldn't afford to lose. But it was too late to back out now, and something in me didn't want to back out. Wanted to prove that confidence wrong. Fair week arrived. The fairgrounds had never seen this much activity. The county fair committee had promoted the competition heavily, called it the Tractor Challenge, sold it as educational entertainment, explained the different approaches to farming, made it about more than just a bet between two men. Friday night, before the Saturday competition, I couldn't sleep, kept going over everything in my head. The plowing technique, the planting process, the pulling strategy, kept worrying about something breaking, some weakness I hadn't found. Some way Jake's technology would overwhelm my experience. Finally gave up trying to sleep at 3 a.m., went out to the shed, fired up the Farmall one more time, listened to it run. That steady four-cylinder rhythm, the mechanical precision of moving parts doing exactly what they were designed to do 73 years ago, the simplicity, the reliability, the absolute dependability of a machine built when people still made things to last forever. That sound calmed me, reminded me why I trusted this tractor, why I'd bet on it against something that cost 200 times as much and had technology I barely understood, because I knew this machine, knew what it could do, knew it wouldn't let me down. Saturday morning the fairgrounds were packed. Had to be 500 people there easily, maybe more. Farmers from 3 counties, families with kids, news crews from 2 local TV stations and 1 from Pittsburgh. The county fair committee had built temporary bleachers, sold tickets at $5 per person, made it a whole production. The biggest event in Millbrook County in decades. Jake showed up in a brand new truck pulling a trailer with his 8R340. That tractor gleamed, perfect paint, perfect tires, perfect everything. Looked like it had just come off the showroom floor, because it basically had. Jake had ordered it special for this competition. Hadn't even delivered it to a customer yet. Was using it as a rolling advertisement. I showed up in my 1994 Ford F250 that needed paint and had 200,000 miles on it. Pulled my Farmall M on a rusty trailer my dad had built in 1986. That tractor was clean. I'd washed it, maintained it, but it looked every bit of its 73 years. Faded red paint, worn decals, patina that comes from decades of actual work. The crowd was divided. Younger farmers and technology enthusiasts were backing Jake. Older farmers and traditionalists were backing me, but most people thought Jake would win. The betting odds, if you could call them that, were running about 3-1 in Jake's favor. The first competition was plowing. Quarter-acre each, straight as you can, deep as specified, fastest time wins. They'd measured and marked identical plots, same soil, same conditions, completely fair. Jake went first. That 8 are fired up with a smooth diesel rumble. He engaged the plow, hit the GPS auto steer. That tractor pulled a 6-bottom plow through that quarter-acre like it was butter. Perfect straight lines, perfect depth, perfect consistency. Finished in 11 minutes and 37 seconds. The crowd applauded. Impressive, no question about it. That was modern farming at its finest. Then it was my turn. I climbed up on the Farmall M, fired it up. That old 4-cylinder engine chugged to life with its distinctive sound. New GPS, new outsteer. Just me, the tractor, and a 2-bottom plow, had to steer manually. Had to judge depth by feel. Had to maintain straight lines by eye. But here's what I had that Jake didn't. Experience. 26 years of running that exact tractor, knowing exactly how it responded. Knowing how to read the soil through the plow. Knowing how to maintain speed and depth without technology telling me. I finished in 14 minutes and 52 seconds, slower, but not by much, and my furrows were just as straight, just as deep, just as consistent. Did it with a 50-year-old tractor and no computers. The crowd was surprised. They'd expected me to be much slower, expected the quality to be worse, but I'd proven the old Farmall could do professional work even against modern competition. Jake won the plowing, fair and square. He was faster, but the crowd's mood had shifted. This wasn't going to be the blowout everyone expected. Second competition was planting, 8 rows, 200 feet. Fastest time with accurate seed placement wins. They'd provided identical planters, matched to each tractor's capabilities. Jake's 8R had all the advantages here. Variable rate seeding, automatic row shutoff, real-time population monitoring, technology designed to optimize planting. He finished in 9 minutes and 14 seconds. Perfect seed placement. Perfect spacing. The computer systems worked flawlessly. My turn. The Farmall pulled a mechanical planter from the 1970s. No computers, just gears and chains and ground-driven mechanisms. Had to set the seed rate manually. Had to maintain speed manually. Had to watch depth manually. But that mechanical simplicity meant something important. Nothing to go wrong. No sensors to fail. No computers to glitch. Just reliable mechanical systems that had been working for 50 years and would work for 50 more. I finished in 10 minutes and 8 seconds, less than a minute behind. And when they checked my seed placement, it was within acceptable tolerances. Not quite as perfect as Jake's computer-controlled system, but close enough that any farmer in the county would have been satisfied with it. Jake won planting too. He was up 2-0. Technically, he'd already won the bet. Best 2 out of 3. But everyone wanted to see the pulling contest. That's what people had really come for. The raw power test. The pulling contest was simple in concept but brutal in execution. Hook up to a weighted sled. Pull it as far as you can. The sled had a mechanism that transferred weight forward as you pulled, making it progressively heavier. Eventually, every tractor would hit a point where the tires broke loose and it couldn't pull anymore. Furthest distance wins. Pure power and traction test. This was supposed to be Jake's moment of absolute triumph. His moment to prove, beyond any doubt, that modern technology crushes old iron. His 8R had 340 horsepower. My Farmall M had maybe 45 horsepower when it rolled off the assembly line in 1951, probably closer to 40 now, after 73 years. On paper, this wasn't even a competition. This was a demonstration, a public execution of the idea that old equipment could compete. The crowd knew it too. The betting odds that people were joking about had shifted heavily, 10-1 in Jake's favor for the pull. Some people were actually placing real money on it. Jake's dealership employees were taking bets. They thought this was free money, thought there was no way the little Farmall could compete in a raw power test. Jake hooked up first. The competition officials had a proper tractor pull sled borrowed from the state fair. Professional equipment, the kind they use for serious pulling competitions. Started at a manageable weight, but got progressively harder as the weight transferred forward on rails. Jake positioned the big 8R perfectly. The crowd went quiet. This was what everyone had come to see. The moment of truth. Jake revved that big diesel engine. The turbo spooled up with a distinctive whistle. 340 horsepower, ready to be unleashed. He dropped the clutch. The rear tires dug into the dirt. The sled jerked forward. The 8R pulled it like it was nothing at first. 30 feet, 50 feet. The weight kept transferring forward. The pull got harder. But that big tractor kept going. 75 feet, 100 feet. The engine was working now. You could hear it, but it kept pulling. 150 feet, 200 feet. The weight was massive now. The tires were digging grooves 6 inches deep in the dirt. The engine was screaming. The whole tractor was straining, but it kept pulling. 250 feet, 270 feet. Finally, at 273 feet, the tires broke loose completely and started spinning. Jake stopped immediately. Professional pull. No wheel spin that tears up equipment. Clean stop. The crowd erupted. That was impressive. Undeniably impressive. 273 feet, pulling a sled that weighed thousands of pounds by the end. That's what 340 horsepower and modern traction technology could do. Jake climbed down from the 8R. He was grinning. Knew he'd won. Knew the little Farmall couldn't touch that distance. This was his vindication, his proof, his moment to show everyone that old farmers like me needed to wake up and embrace modern technology. Then came my turn. I backed the little Farmall M up to the sled. The contrast was almost comical. Jake's tractor was massive, modern, aggressive. Mine looked like a toy beside it. Looked like something that should be in a parade, not a pulling competition. People in the crowd were actually laughing. Not mean laughter, more like nervous laughter. The kind you do when you're watching something that seems impossible. This old tractor, with a fraction of the horsepower, was supposed to pull that sled. After seeing what the big John Deere could do, it looked ridiculous. It looked like a guaranteed loss. But I knew something they didn't. Knew something Jake didn't. Something you learn from decades of using equipment for actual work, instead of just reading specifications on a sales brochure. Pulling isn't just about horsepower. Horsepower matters, sure, but pulling is about torque, about weight distribution, about traction, about how power is delivered to the ground, about leverage and physics, and a dozen other factors that don't show up in a spec sheet. That Farmall M weighed 7,000 pounds. Doesn't sound like much compared to modern equipment. But all of it was low to the ground. All of it was concentrated over the rear axle. The engineers at International Harvester in 1951 designed that tractor specifically for pulling plows through heavy soil. Everything about its design was optimized for traction and pulling force. Those big rear tires weren't just for show. They were 42 inches tall and filled with calcium chloride solution. Each tire weighed over 700 pounds just from the fluid. That's 1,400 pounds of liquid ballast right at the point where power meets ground. Maximum traction, the four-cylinder engine made its power differently than modern diesels. Peak torque came at low RPM, around 1,200 revolutions per minute, right in the range where you need it for heavy pulling. The power delivery was smooth, consistent. No turbos to spool up. No complex fuel management systems. Just raw mechanical torque generated by 4 big pistons moving in perfect rhythm. I climbed up on the seat. The crowd was watching, waiting to see how quickly this would be over, waiting to see the little tractor fail, waiting for Jake's moment of complete triumph. I fired up the Farmall. That 4-cylinder engine came to life with its distinctive sound, completely different from Jake's high-tech diesel. This was mechanical music, the sound of cast iron and steel, of simple engineering executed perfectly, of 73 years of reliability. I revved it up, found that sweet spot at 1,200 RPM, where the torque peaked. The whole tractor vibrated with contained power, ready to work, ready to prove what it could do. I dropped the clutch. The Farmall dug in. The rear tires bit into the dirt. The sled jerked forward. We were moving, slow, steady, the way you pull heavy loads, not with explosive force, but with relentless pressure. 30 feet. 50 feet. The crowd was starting to pay attention now. This wasn't immediately embarrassing. The little tractor was actually moving the sled. 75 feet. 100 feet. The weight kept increasing. The Farmall kept pulling. I kept the throttle steady. Kept the engine at that 1,200 RPM sweet spot. Let the torque do the work. The tires were digging deep now, throwing dirt, finding traction. That calcium chloride ballast was doing its job. That weight distribution was working. The physics were in my favor. 150 feet. The crowd went quiet. This wasn't supposed to be happening. 200 feet. People were standing up now. 250 feet. The little Farmall that everyone had laughed at was pulling that massive sled through the distance everyone thought was impossible. 273 feet. I'd matched Jake's distance. The crowd was on their feet. People were yelling, cheering. Nobody could believe what they were watching. The 73-year-old tractor, with 45 horsepower, had pulled as far as the 340 horsepower modern machine. But I wasn't done. The Farmall was still pulling. The engine was screaming now, working at maximum capacity. The tires were digging grooves, a foot deep. The whole tractor was shaking with effort, but we were still moving forward. 280 feet, 290. Every foot felt like a mile. The weight was crushing now. The sled was fighting me. But that old Farmall wasn't quitting, wasn't giving up, wasn't accepting defeat. 295 feet, I could feel the tires starting to slip. could feel we were near the end, but we had a little more. Just a little more. 297 feet. The tires finally broke loose completely and started spinning. I stopped immediately, shut it down. We were done. The crowd went absolutely insane. The noise was deafening. People were jumping, screaming, throwing hats in the air. The little Farmall M had pulled 24 feet further than the massive John Deere 8R. It had won the pulling contest, against all odds, against all expectations, against everything everyone thought they knew about horsepower and modern technology. I sat there on the seat for a moment, trying to process what had just happened, trying to believe it was real. That old tractor had just done something nobody thought was possible, had proven that sometimes the old ways work, that sometimes simple is better than complex, that sometimes knowing your equipment matters more than having the newest technology. Jake stood there, speechless. His 340 horsepower tractor had just been outpulled by a 73-year-old machine with a fraction of the power. The fair committee had a decision to make. Jake had won 2 competitions, but the rules said best, 2 out of 3. I'd technically lost, but I'd also proven something nobody expected. That old tractor had competed, had held its own, had actually beaten the new one at pulling. The committee chairman stood up. He said, "Jake Peterson won, plowing and planting fair and square. But Hayes's Farmall just did something nobody thought was possible. Before we declare a winner, I think we need to acknowledge what we just saw. That old equipment might not be as obsolete as some people think." Jake's face was red. He'd won the bet technically, but lost the moment everyone would remember, the moment everyone would talk about, the moment that proved old iron could still compete. He walked over to me, had to decide whether to insist on the technical victory or acknowledge what had happened. Finally, he said, "I'll pay the $10,000. You earned it." That was one hell of a pull. The crowd applauded. Jake had saved face by being gracious. I'd made my point without having to claim victory. Everyone was satisfied. But Jake wasn't done. He said, "How about we make this interesting? Instead of me paying you $10,000, how about we call it even? I'll admit old equipment has value I didn't appreciate. You admit new technology has advantages. We both learned something today." I thought about it, thought about what I'd proven, thought about the pride of winning versus the wisdom of making peace. Finally, I said, "Deal. Keep your money. Just stop acting like old farmers are idiots for using equipment that works." We shook hands. The crowd cheered. The bet was settled not with money but with mutual respect earned through competition. That evening at the fair, people kept coming up to me, young farmers asking about the Farmall, asking about maintenance, about repair, about whether old equipment really could compete. I'd started something, made people question assumptions, made them think about whether newest always meant best. Jake's dealership actually benefited too. People respected that he'd competed fairly, respected that he'd been gracious in defeat. His sales didn't suffer. If anything, they improved because people saw him as more than just a salesman, saw him as someone who'd put his money and reputation on the line. The Farmall M went back to work Monday morning. Same as it had for 26 years. Same as it would for who knows how many more. That tractor had proven it still had purpose, still had value, still could do the work it was built for 73 years ago. Did I win the bet? Technically no. Jake won 2 out of 3. But I won something more important. I proved that old doesn't automatically mean obsolete. That experience and understanding can compete with horsepower and computers. That sometimes the simple solution is better than the complex one. The story spread beyond our county. Farming magazines picked it up. YouTube videos appeared. People arguing about old versus new. Some agreeing with me, some with Jake, but everyone engaged with the question, everyone thinking about it. That's the real victory. Not money, not bragging rights, but changing how people think, making them question assumptions, making them consider that maybe both approaches have value, that maybe farming isn't about having the newest equipment, maybe it's about having equipment you understand and can rely on. The John Deere dealer bet $10,000 his tractor would beat my old Farmall. He won on paper, but everyone watched him lose the moment that mattered, the moment everyone remembered, the moment that changed minds. That's worth more than any bet. My name is Russell Hayes. I farm with a 1951 Farmall M, and I wouldn't trade it for all the technology in the world. Not because new is bad, but because old still works, and working is what matters.